Today on Exploring Nevada, we'll once again step back in time as we visit several historic sites in rural Nevada that played a key role in our state's colorful past. We'll visit the old school in Dayton, the Nevada Northern Railroad in Ely, and the train depot in Fernley, where local groups and volunteers are breathing fresh life into these historic treasures, with support from the State Historic Preservation Office.
Dayton has an absolutely marvelous, charming museum that also functions as a broader sense as a cultural center. This facility brings people into the community, it serves a growing community, and it really helps interpret the very roots of Nevada history, because it was right here that the gold was first discovered that set off in the Western Great Basin the settlement that would eventually become Nevada.
This is Gwen Clancy with the Department of Cultural Affairs, and our first stop is Dayton, and we're at the Old Museum, and the person talking with us is Laura Tennant. First of all, what is the Dayton's claim to fame?
Well, our claim to fame is one of the ones we really treasure, is the fact that gold was discovered here in 1849 when a party was headed back from Salt Lake City over to the hill, to the mountains, to California, and they got snowed in. They couldn't go over the mountain, the Sierra, because it was just too deep of snow for the wagons, and they stopped here at Gold Canyon, right west of us, and they dug up a piece of gold, and that we call that a factual event because it's a primary source. It's a handwritten diary.
And so this was an old schoolhouse then that was created after the town was established.
Yeah, after the town was established, one of the first buildings and one of the first things they did, they had schools in people's homes, but they did build this. At one time I heard that it was built by volunteers, but since then research indicates to me that the county did put in some money towards the building of this school. So, about 12 years ago, Dayton started to take its growth spurt, and the new golf course came in, and we felt things were really changing, and all of a sudden it dawned on us that we needed to take some steps to protect our history. And we'd had a dream of making this a museum for a long time, but that time was ripe then to do it. So we jumped in and did our volunteer work. It had been used as a senior center, and a new senior center had been built, so it was now vacant. And they did a library, kind of an old book library in here for a while, and then we jumped in and took over, and it took us hundreds of hours of labor to get it back to its original as much as we could. And it was our volunteer labor that took all the old linoleum off the floor with solid black tar. One year we thought we could open, and we looked at this floor and it was just black tar. It was linoleum. First we took off old green carpet, then we took off old linoleum, and then we had tar. And so we didn't know how we were going to get it off except on our hands and knees. And then somebody suggested to call a roofer, and he had a tool, and it probably did mar the floor a little bit, but it took all that black tar off. So we were able then to open the very next year. So we worked long, hard hours getting it ready, and then as the years went on, we did put in for a grant, and our first grant was to remodel the back room. It had been a kitchen with the senior center, and it was in a terrible, terrible shape, and had kitchen, old sinks and equipment and pipes sticking up out of the floor. And so we got into town and got it ready to go, and then we installed new wood floors in there.
And the Commission for Cultural Affairs
Yes, the
helped
Commission
out.
for Cultural Affairs made the difference. And like these cabinets you see here, all of this display units, this was part of the money where we spent our money. Every single penny you know what, I forgot. All of this was done with one grant. We remodeled the back room and all these display cabinets, and then the other grant was our fire suppression system. That was $33,000. And now we do have a fire suppression system. You can see the sprinklers up here, and they do go off individually. It won't flood every single thing, and it's a dry system to protect the artifacts. So we've learned a lot about how to protect the museum pieces.
So with volunteer labor, a lot of volunteer labor
from the community.
And with dollars from the state and probably elsewhere, you've created now a museum.
Yes, we have.
So what's going on in here?
Well, what's really neat, we do have our exhibits. They start with Dayton's history, which began early on, Native Americans, Chinese. We had the earliest Chinatown here. We have, the Italians were here and did all the ranching and farming about the 1900s. and our history is railroading. It just is, and mining and milling. It just hits every little piece of Nevada history. And so people love to come in here and see the artifacts that we have. Like this old desk back here belonged to the Lyon County's first sheriff in 1862, and then they ranched out here where the golf course is. So their daughter found us a number of years ago, Dixie Lehman in Reno, and she had Dayton history in her basement, and she willed every single thing she had to us. So many of our artifacts, wonderful things, used to be on the big ranch that's now where the golf course is.
Well, now, this is probably unfair, but what's your favorite item in this museum?
I think my favorite item probably is the Chinese collection. I think that the Chinese were fascinating people, that they were here. And the Native American. We have a great Native American collection. So those two are my favorite.
And do you have a phone number or website if people want to get in touch with you?
Yes, now the Chamber has its office out of here. And we work together. It's a good partnership. And it's 246-7909.
And is there any particular event that you want people to know about if they come to Dayton?
Yeah, well, right now we do have the Oodles of Noodles that's coming, and that's promising to be a big event here. And it started out due to our history of noodles, Chinese noodles, Italian noodles, all types of noodles. And that's how it got started. It's only the second annual, but it's quite popular.
And so it's going to be an annual event?
It's going to be an annual event. And then we have Dayton Valley Days, and that was always raise money to preserve our history.
And what time of year is that?
That's a third weekend every September. We have a parade and all kinds of live music and activities. And it's a lot of fun.
Congratulations on a terrific building, wonderful museum.
Thank you. We're proud. We were really proud to have it called a cultural building. That was my most proud moment, when it was called a cultural building. I thought that was even better than a museum.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Nevada is very fortunate to have the Commission for Cultural Affairs and the $2 million a year that it distributes annually to rehabilitate historic buildings to be used as cultural centers. It's really an outstanding project. Almost no other state has anything like it. And we've been able to transform over 60 buildings into remarkable assets scattered all over the Nevada map.
No one looks back fondly on the years they spent in a parking garage. When we lose a historic place, we lose a part of who we are. Help protect historic places in your community. Visit nationaltrust.org.
The Nevada Northern Railway complex is one of the nation's greatest railroad assets. Anyone who's interested in railroads must go out there. It is pristine, turn-of-the-century industrial complex that is preserved in an amazing way. Unfortunately, the buildings need a great deal of help. And the Commission for Cultural Affairs has been able to rise to the occasion and help buildings one at a time so that they can be preserved to be enjoyed in the 21st century.
The great thing about the complex is it's a time capsule out here in Northeast Nevada. It is unique in that it is a National Historic District, and what makes up the district is 47 historic buildings that are from the original days when the railroad came here in 1906. It's complete. We have all of the station buildings, we have the engine house, the machine shop, the carpenter shops, the paint shops, the blacksmith shops, and in our vault we have the payroll records from 1905. So all of the paperwork is here too. So if you want to know something about the Nevada Northern, it's right here in Ely, Nevada. The uniqueness here is our steam locomotives. Locomotive 40, Locomotive 93 have been here from the builder, and they were delivered 93 and 94 years ago. So they came from Elko or Baldwin, were shipped directly to Ely, and they've been in service ever since. So again, that makes for the uniqueness of it. And we also have our wooden boxcars. They came to the property in 1912, and we're in the process of restoring them. We're going to go ahead and remove the siding and replace the siding, but the trucks, the gearing, and everything is original. So, and on the inside of the cars, what makes it so unique is the station names. When they had freight for the different stations along the line, they would take chalk and say, "This is for Cherry Creek," and they would write that on the inside of the car and put the freight there, and some of their spellings were very unique. And so that we're going to protect. That's in the inside of the car. And so what we're going to get at the end of this is a completely and totally restored Nevada Northern boxcar, just like it was coming from the builder in 1915. We get funding from many different sources, and one of the sources we get funding from is the Commission on Cultural Affairs. They've been very supportive of the complex. Right now we've just received a grant from them for a structural retrofit of the engine house. We store our entire collection in the engine house. We have our steam locomotives, our diesel locomotives, our passenger cars are in there. And the building was built in 1906. Its last remodel was 1941. So the money we receive from the Commission on Cultural Affairs will go in to stabilize and reinforce the building, so it will be there for another 100 years.
Do people like doing the actual restoration work? And do you allow volunteers to come in and do it?
Yes, we do. We have a very small staff. Right now we have a staff of 4 people. And so 4 people to handle this 40-acre complex would be too much. So we have volunteers that come in from all of Nevada and our surrounding states, and actually we've had a person come over from the United Kingdom who come in just to help. And it's roll up your sleeves, get dirty, and we also have helpers on our steam locomotives. I mean, there's nothing about railroading that's clean. It's all heavy, dirty work. And we actually have volunteers who come in and assist us in the maintenance. We have Locomotive 40 who's going to be torn down. And part of this teardown means climbing through the boiler, and they will be like little moles just going through the boiler and everything, taking out all the old pipes, putting in the new pipes. And again, they'll be working 12, 14, 16-hour days without pay, just for the joy and the self-satisfaction of preserving this heritage for the future generations in Nevada.
Well, it seems like there's something else that's special about this complex, and that is that it's kind of a hands-on place.
We're about as hands-on as you get. It's really amazing. Every time we take a tourist train out over the road, the day starts at 4:30 in the morning with 1 paid staff member and a volunteer who come down and light off the steam locomotive. And then, because of our pride in our equipment, Locomotive 93 is hand-washed every morning before it goes out on the road. Now, I don't wash my own car, and they get me up there washing this locomotive, and it's about 2 stories tall as the locomotive is heating up. And so you're hand washing and rinsing it and polishing it, and then we oil all the way around. At the same time, we're also throwing more coal into the boiler, getting it hot. If our train goes at 10 o'clock in the morning, the steam crew will show up at 8 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours before train time, to do the final oiling, top off with coal, top off with water, and then they go down the track. Our locomotive engineer can be from Carson City, can be from Ely, can be from California. So what happens is, with a volunteer crew who now take the locomotive down to the train and meet their train crew, couple up, and then load up with passengers and then head out over the hill and come back again. This is all accomplished with volunteers. It's very rare for us to have a paid staff member on a train.
What's the magic of the place, do you think, Mark?
Well, in our push-button world right now, you know, we push a button, we have monitors the whole bit. On the steam locomotive, when you put the fire in that and put the water in that, the locomotive comes alive. It hisses, it sizzles the whole bit. And there's no push buttons on the back of the locomotive. It's all manual labor. It's our artistry. You just don't go up there and say, I'm going to do this, do that. You have to have a feel for the locomotive. And we invite people up into the cab of the locomotive when the locomotive is hot. One day, when the locomotive was cold, actually, what we did is I gave a tour to the locomotive. I had a family and then 2 gentlemen from Reno who were there. And I explained how the locomotive worked. I opened up the fire doors and just threw in a piece of coal. Well, the son asked, could he have a piece of coal? And I said, sure, but it's dirty. And then the daughter of the family group said, can I have a piece of coal too? And I said, yes, but again, it's very dirty. And then the 2 gentlemen from Reno who were in the mid-20s, they wanted a piece of coal too. And I think the reason why they wanted that piece of coal is because that's what powers the locomotive. It's part of the magic of firing up a steam locomotive, just throwing shovel and shovel and shovel of coal in there.
It's absolutely wonderful. Very historical and gorgeous scenery, and the locomotive is just beautiful. Oh,
Oh, I think it's great. It's just a bunch of fun, and I'd recommend it to anybody.
To learn more about the Nevada Northern Railroad Complex in Ely, call 775-289-2085 or check out the websites listed below. And next, we'll head west to Fernley, where volunteers are working hard to re-establish another historic train operation.
Gather around. Now everyone, this is an exhibit of an Ice Age mammal. Now long ago in Nevada, these ancient elephants rummaged through springs and stream beds for food.
Imagine at one time, herds of these huge animals roamed in what might have been your own backyard. You'd be amazed.
You know, Nevada has wonderful things to see and visit throughout the state, no matter where you are or where you're going to go. And this is true for the entire year. Check out our webpage and look for those special occasions and look for the places to visit and enjoy them. But every May, with Archaeological Awareness Week and Historic Preservation Week, we have a concentration of special events that really should give you something that you can enjoy.
When your children ask where you got married, will you have to tell them, over there by the unleaded? When we lose a historic place, we lose a part of who we are. Help protect historic places in your community. Visit nationaltrust.org.
Railroad resources are one of the great tourism draws, obviously, because people who love railroads want to visit them. And Fernley has a great depot and great people who have worked very hard to turn that resource into something that they can enjoy and that they can present to visitors. People who like railroads, people who like small town Nevada really need to go out and see the Fernley Depot.
The historic train depot in Fernley has had its ups and downs. Built in 1914, it served the busy east-west corridor linking Chicago to San Francisco. When it outlived its usefulness, it was almost demolished. But a group of volunteers known as the Fernley Preservation Society came to the rescue in 1986. They purchased the structure for $1 from the Southern Pacific Railroad, moved the depot about a mile down the street to its present location, and ever since have been working hard to restore the structure to its former glory. Their goal is to create a railroad and cultural museum complex. We spoke first with Steve Knowles, Vice President of the Society. Steve, this is a work in progress. You're coming along really well. If we could fast forward down the track, so to speak, 5 years, what would this look like? What's your vision for what will finally be here?
Well, what the vision is a fully functional museum with the entire backyard here with historical equipment and displays that the public can see, hands-on. There'll be operational equipment here. The railroad yard will have an operating locomotive that can move cars around. People will see stuff that's not static. There'll be lawns, picnic areas, and it'll just be a wonderful experience for people of all ages. One thing I don't like about a lot of museums you go to, the stuff sits there like it's on a pedestal. You can't touch it, you can't look at it. We're going to have a whole different concept here, and it's going to make this museum unique, fun for people of all ages, because our stuff's going to be restored so people can see it operate, it's going to move, it's going to run, and people are going to have an enjoyable time here. This here was the ticket office window where you can purchase your tickets, and when the museum is completed, people will come into this room, which will be our main entrance, and they'll walk up to this counter, and they'll go to one of our volunteers, such as Norma, and be able to purchase an admission ticket, which will look like your railroad ticket. And that'll be your entrance into the museum.
Okay, and this room right here was the old waiting room.
This was the waiting room, and it'll be restored as a waiting room again, and look just as it did in 1914. And that'll be our sort of the premiere to the museum when people walk in.
And over there you have the ladies' retiring room.
That's correct. That's a room for the women to go relax in, and the restroom was around the corner from that for the women. The men's restroom is over here.
Okay, so then they'll go through that door over there?
Correct. They'll go through that door into our main yard, which will have various displays, through the old schoolhouse we have out back, and then see the train cars outside. Then they'll wind their way through the building, back into the building, through it, which will be our main museum hall and the freight house, down through the baggage room, and then back out to the front. State gave us $40,000 through the city of Fernley to do restoration work on this building, and we decided to stretch the taxpayers' money as far as we could by our group doing as much work as we could on the structure. And within just limited time before the money had to be returned to the state, we spent that money and got the entire exterior of the building restored to its 1914 appearance, including electrical on the outside, lighting, doors, windows, the entire exterior.
And now you're going to get a little bit more federal money now?
Yes, we got a grant for $171,000 plus $10,000 that the town is matching us, and that's going to be used to restore the interior of the first floor, and we've applied for second phase funding, which is near $400,000 to complete the project.
So Steve, what are we looking at here?
This was the main freight room. It'll be restored and used for our main museum hall area with different various displays in here that need to be kept out of the weather.
And what's that down there at the end?
That down there at the end is two items. One's the freight scale. It's originally part of the building, and the larger item behind it is an apple sorter from a local apple farm. And we'll have various other things in here as well, because the railroad shipped a lot of freight, mostly agricultural, out of Fernley.
Well, the very first thing they tried to raise was cantaloupes, and they beautiful cantaloupe, but it took too long to get them to the shipping point, so it didn't prove out that great. Overripe, and they couldn't go clear back east with them. And along in the last of the 30s or early 40s, the first streamliner came through Fernley, so they had the whole school get on the back dock to watch it go through, and they made it stay back far enough so that there wouldn't be any rocks or anything fly and hit us as the trains went through.
Was that pretty exciting when you were a little kid?
Yeah, pretty much.
And what was that for, Bert?
This was the men's restroom.
Right in there.
Right in there. The room isn't much over 4 foot wide and about, well, maybe 12 foot long.
What you're looking at here is the living quarters for the station agent and his family. And each station agent's quarters on the Southern Pacific were roughly the same square footage. That way, when a station agent and his family got transferred, all their furnishings could be moved to the next station and fit in there without any problem.
Okay, and Norma, what are you going to use this room for?
So we're going to have it for display for artists, pictures or pottery work or anything like that. If they want to bring it down here to show for a few days every month.
Kind of like a little art gallery here then.
Yes.
Even while the 25 or so members of the Fernley Preservation Society hammered and sanded and painted and celebrated the new life of the Fernley Depot, the group was busy acquiring artifacts and rolling stock. One especially good find was made by Linda Sanders, treasurer of the society.
That's our tank car. That was a very interesting story. United States Gypsum Company was tearing up some track, and we were looking for railroad ties to finish our rail yard back here.
And that's up in Gerlach.
I called a friend of mine up there and said, do you have any spare railroad ties? And they said, no, but we have a tank car. So, it's an antique tank car. We went up within 3 weeks, had it moved, and now it's ours, and we're very proud of it. We had the rail, but we were looking for ties and wound up with a tank car.
This is Churchill School number 3, originally located on the Quilisi Ranch near Dayton. And the building was saved in 1952 by our president, Bert Emerson, who was with the VFW. They needed a hall to use for their group, so the county commissioner owned the building at that time and gave it to him, so Bert moved the building here to Fernley.
So they told Bert, if you can have the building if you move it.
That's correct.
Okay, and Steve, right in front of your building there, right along the highway, you have a caboose.
Yeah, that's Cotton Belt Caboose number 48. That was donated to our group in about 10 years ago, and we moved it over here, and we are in the works of restoring it. The inside is badly damaged from vandals and from transients who lived in it and set it afire. So we're looking for anything that we can get to restore the inside of the caboose with original artifacts.
Now we're looking at the car. It says Nevada Copper Belt. What's that, Steve?
The Copper Belt was a railroad that ran down in Yerington from 1910 to 1947, and that was caboose number 2. I acquired the car about 15 years ago, and I plan on restoring it. We moved it up here as one of the displays for the museum.
Okay, you also own that behind you, Steve?
Yeah, that's a World War II era 50-foot boxcar. It came from Hawthorne. We acquired that, plus our group acquired the other one sitting across the yard for display here at the museum.
What do you like so much about trains?
I've been involved with them all my life.
And why?
From model trains to the history, I just like the history of railroads. That's what I'm into.
A lot of people like trains. Why do you think they do?
It's one of the largest hobbies in the country.
Right, why is that?
And I think it's just romance. A lot of people had family that work for railroads and still do work for railroads. So a lot of people grow up having a model train set when they're a little kid at Christmas. And that's what's led to me having every scale from model trains to full-size ones.
How does it feel to own a railroad car?
Well, I own several. So yeah, it feels pretty good in knowing that we're saving history.
The Fernley Preservation Society is looking for artifacts from 1914 when the depot was built up until the early 1960s. Items from Fernley's past relating to railroads, logging, ranching, mining, and agriculture are all welcome. To make a donation of goods or cash to help the ongoing preservation effort, contact Linda Sanders at 775-575-2515. And to learn more about the Fernley Depot Restoration Project, visit the Fernley Chamber of Commerce website. The imaginative reuse of historic buildings is taking place throughout Nevada, with support from the Commission for Cultural Affairs. Please join us in preserving and celebrating our state's colorful heritage. Call 775-684-3448. Besides administering grants, the Preservation Office maintains the state and national registers of historic places and runs the State Historic Marker Program. The State Historic Preservation Office is part of the Nevada Department of Cultural Affairs, along with the State Library and Archives, Nevada Arts Council, and Division of Museums and History. For more information, visit us at nevadaculture.org. And see you next time on Exploring Nevada.